Hey guys, I'm Kayla, the travel nurse, and today we're going to talk about housing. I know housing can be very overwhelming for those of us travelers who choose to find our own as opposed to taking company provided housing. In this video, I'm going to give you some resources to make the experience a lot less stressful when you're looking for your next home away from home. So what you want to aim for ideally is short-term furnished housing. I say that with emphasis because you don't want to be traveling around with all of your furniture. That is ridiculous as a traveler. I've worked with plenty of nurses who will rent a U-Haul and travel around with couches and beds and tables and lamps. Like, why? I mean, good for you for being willing to pack up your whole house, but it's unnecessary. It is so costly to do that. It is such a pain to have to pack everything up, all this bulky furniture. Don't do it. If there are home goods that you can't live without, by all means bring them along. But I'll be honest with you, you can purchase almost everything you need on the cheap from various stores. I'm gonna make a whole video about that later. But most of the time you can find simple things that you need very easily. You have a bunch of resources for housing. Number one resource is Airbnb. Airbnb is everywhere. Like, I am in Ironwood, Michigan. It is a town about this big. It is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan where nobody lives. It is super rural, and I found housing on Airbnb. Like, literally without Airbnb, I would have been living in my car. Yes, it cost me more than it probably should have because Airbnb has ridiculous fees and taxes. It's like my biggest gripe, and probably most people's gripe, about Airbnb itself. However, beggars can't be choosers, so you take what you can get. I know Airbnb can be expensive with their taxes and fees, but I'm going to post my link down below in the description box, and you can save $65 off your first stay if you use my link through Airbnb. One tactic that I have been using is if I find one that will work for me, I will message the host and I will ask them if they would be willing to take the listing off Airbnb and rent to me off site. Most of the time, hosts are very receptive because it puts more money in their pocket due to there being no fees, no commission, no taxes coming out of their cut of the rent. It saves you money because you are not paying those taxes and those fees. However, if you do this, if you decide and the host is agreeable to paying off sites and paying via Venmo or PayPal or Cash App or whatever you decide to use, you need to protect yourself. I cannot emphasize this enough. So one way to do that is to draft a simple rental agreement outlining the monthly rent, the lease terms as far as length of stay, the terms of early cancellation, should you be canceled, because that does happen sometimes, and you don't want to be paying for rent if you're not using all those days. So that part I'm going to put even more emphasis on is you need to have something in there saying you will be refunded for unused days should you be canceled early, and anything else that you find relevant. I am going to post a link to some of the simple rental agreements that I have found online in the description box below. Feel free to use those. I believe the first two on that website are the most appropriate for travelers for short-term month-to-month leases. Or you could always draft one on Microsoft Word. There's templates for that, but these are already pre-done and they're pretty inclusive of everything you would need. And then just make sure you sign and that the landlord signs. If you want to go the extra mile and get that sucker notarized, go for it. But once you guys enter into an agreement and a contract and it's signed, it's a binding document. So it just protects you. It also adds a layer of protection to the landlord or the host. I haven't had any trouble getting people to agree to this. It benefits both parties. Now, the other option that is amazing and is geared directly towards healthcare workers is Furnished Finder. I don't think a lot of travelers know about Furnished Finder. It's not very new. It's been around for a few years. It is Such a great site. You have options. You can opt to rent a room, you can opt to rent a whole entire unit or home or apartment or whatever is being offered. These hosts are advertising specifically to healthcare workers, so they understand the needs of travelers, which is great because Airbnb just rents to everyone. They're super generalized, but this is specific to us. There aren't any fees or taxes, which is also great. And I am going to post a link to Furnished Finder in the description box down below. There was another site that I stumbled onto recently called Travel Nurse Housing. I haven't used them, but I will post a link for this one as well. And apparently they've partnered with multiple travel agencies, like big agencies, like I believe it was Aya and Cross Country and some of the bigger ones. But it's totally free. They have over 40,000 listings. It really looks legit. I mean, I would definitely check it out if Airbnb and Furnished Finder aren't yielding you any results. There's also VRBO and HomeAway. I believe they are owned by the same parent company now, so they do share a lot of the same rentals. So whether platform you choose to use, you'll see the same rentals. They are expensive because they're mostly geared towards vacation rentals, but sometimes you can find like a good deal on there. You can find a good home that'll work for you. It just depends on the location. There is Facebook Marketplace. I don't have a Facebook. Shocker. I don't quite know how Facebook works. I know that some of the travelers I have worked with have used it to rent rooms before in the past and have had pretty good success with it, so that's another option you could use. One method that I used, and I hesitate to say this, but for many years, and I'm talking probably the first, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years of traveling, I used Craigslist for my housing. And Craigslist can be great for some things, like if you have free items or you want to go do a curb pickup for some furniture, like it's good for things like that. But I used it for housing. And I was just a single girl solo traveling, really young, and I was just like, oh yeah, you have a room for rent, random stranger on Craigslist, let's chit chat on the phone for a minute and I'll get a good feel for you, and if you don't sound like a weirdo, I'll rent your room. I don't know how I didn't get murdered. Like, you would not find me renting a room on Craigslist nowadays. Like, there's no way. Although I will say I was super fortunate. I never had any issues. I'd say that's a pretty good streak to not have any issues the whole time I used that website, or I used that option of Craigslist. I wouldn't advise it unless you are looking for a sublet, because a sublet will be your own place, your own space. You don't have to share with somebody who could be a total weirdo. But I definitely would put that at the bottom of the resource list. One thing you can do if you don't want to search all these different sites and take all this time to look at each different website individually is there's a website called tripping.com, and what it is an aggregate for all of these websites we just talked about. So you could literally go on here, type in New York City, and you would see every rental listing from every other website, and then you can filter and sort and do all of that stuff, and then it'll tell you which site it's from, and it'll take you to that site, and you can proceed from there. So that is another option if you're like, I ain't wasting my time doing all these different websites and all this mess. Like, I'm just gonna go straight to one thing and see all my options everywhere. So that is a good option. I have not used it. I am aware of it, but I haven't used it because I tend to lean on Airbnb and Furnished Finder for the most part. I just have better success and luck that way. I also use hotels as a resource. So when you look at hotels, they give you a nightly rate. If you even put in a month or 2 months or 3 months at a time, it'll still give you the set nightly rate. It won't discount you for the month. So what you have to do is, say you find a short-term stay hotel and it's something that will really work for you and that's where you want to live while you're on contract, you just call the hotel, you ask for like their leasing specialist or something by that name, but you basically tell them, hey, I'm going to be here for 13 weeks and I was looking to get a discount on that nightly rate, and they will hook you up with their specialist. They will give you the breakdown of the monthly cost, what the discounts are. Sometimes they ask you what your budget is, and if they are super cool, they will work within your budget. So that is definitely an option. This resource I'm going to give you is your agency itself. So if you call and talk to your recruiter and you say, man, I'm having one heck of a time finding housing, or I can't find housing, or you simply just don't want to look up your housing, most agencies have a housing department who will help you find housing in your area. And they also have partnered with local people in the area who have said, hey, I've got this basement apartment for rent and it's X amount of dollars per month, and I'm only looking to rent to travelers. Or they'll be like, hey, I've got a room and this is how much it is, and I only want a traveler in here. So a lot of local people in certain places will call agencies, multiple agencies, and tell them, I have a place for a traveler. Another resource that you can use is the hospital. So sometimes if you'll call human resources and ask them if anybody local is looking for a roommate or anybody is looking to rent an apartment, a lot of HR departments in hospitals know of people who solely rent to travelers. So the hospital is actually a weirdly wonderful resource to use if you are just not finding what you're looking for. I hope these resources will help you find your home when you're away on your next contract. I will see you in the next video. Good luck and happy travels.